Picture this. Edward III of England, a young king with great hair and even greater ambition, suddenly finds his French lands confiscated by the French crown. Normally an English king would bow politely, say "Oui, monseigneur," and carry on. But Edward wasn't having it. Instead, he pulled the medieval equivalent of flipping the table and declared, "Actually, I'm the rightful king of France." His claim came through his mother Isabella, but the French laughed him off because inheritance through women wasn't recognized. Cue dramatic music. The 100 Years' War begins. Fun fact, despite the name, the war lasted 116 years. Medieval branding wasn't their strong suit. Edward struggled to raise cash for his invasion. Wars are expensive, even when you don't have to pay for Netflix. Finally, in 1340, he declared himself King of France and launched his first big move, the Battle of Sluys. The English basically turned merchant ships into warships, sailed into battle, and smashed the French fleet. England secured the Channel, which was like owning the medieval version of the M25 motorway. Then came the Battle of Crecy in 1346. Edward's army, armed with English and Welsh longbowmen, shredded the French knights. It was a shocking victory. Imagine peasants with bows humiliating armored nobles. Edward followed up by capturing Calais in 1347, a golden prize that gave England a cheap and easy gateway into France. Things were looking good until the Black Death arrived in 1348. Suddenly, everyone was too busy dying to fight. War paused. Plague 1, Kings 0. Edward's son, the Black Prince, named for his dark armor, not his mood, launched a devastating chevauchée, basically a medieval road trip where you burn everything in sight. In 1356, he faced King John II of France at Poitiers. Despite being outnumbered, the English won and King John was captured. Yes, the King of France was literally dragged off like a prize cow. England demanded a ransom so huge it made modern football transfer fees look modest. France, meanwhile, descended into riots and civil war. Eventually, the Treaty of Bretigny, 1360, ended the first phase of the war. Edward got lots of land, dropped his claim to the French throne, and King John died in London in 1364, probably not the vacation he had in mind. John's son Charles V wasn't about to let England keep winning. He reignited the war in 1369, and under his leadership, France started clawing back territory. The English Black Prince fell ill and returned home, dying in 1376. Edward III followed in 1377, leaving the throne to his grandson Richard II, who was only 10 years old. Meanwhile, France also had a child king, Charles VI, who later suffered bouts of madness. Two kingdoms run by kids and unstable regents. What could possibly go wrong? Spoiler: everything. England made peace for a while, but Richard II's reign was plagued by noble infighting. Eventually his cousin Henry Bolingbroke, later Henry IV, overthrew him in 1399. England was distracted, and France was busy with its own civil war between the Dukes of Burgundy and Orléans. The war simmered but didn't boil. Enter Henry V, one of England's most famous kings. In 1415, he invaded France, captured Harfleur, and marched toward Calais. The French intercepted him at Agincourt. Outnumbered, Henry's army relied on longbowmen again and annihilated the French nobility. It was a slaughter, and Agincourt became legendary. Henry kept pushing, capturing Normandy and Rouen by 1419. France was still in civil strife, and the English looked poised to conquer it all. And here's where we pause, because in 1419, the Duke of Burgundy was assassinated, setting the stage for the next bloody chapter. Alliances would shift, Joan of Arc would rise, and the war would drag on for decades more. But by now, you can see why the 100 Years' War wasn't just a war. It was a medieval epic of ambition, betrayal, plague, and arrows flying everywhere. The French Dauphin, heir to the throne, was supposed to inherit France. But wait! The Duke of Burgundy, Philippe, decided to throw a royal curveball. He sided with the English and declared his support for Henry V as the rightful king of France. Boom! This was the final nail in the French coffin. The Treaty of Troyes, 1420, was signed, and it was a medieval mic drop moment. Henry V was declared regent and heir to the French throne. Charles VI's children were disinherited. Ouch. Henry married Charles's daughter, Catherine of Valois. They had a son in 1421, also named Henry because medieval kings were creative with names. It looked like England had won everything. But back home, Henry had problems. Some nobles plotted to overthrow him and replace him with Edmund Mortimer. This was called the Southampton Plot. Sounds juicy, right? Except Mortimer didn't even want to be king. The plot fizzled faster than a wet firework. Henry crushed it, proving he wasn't just a conqueror, he was a master of keeping his throne secure. Henry also had to deal with the rise of Lollardy, a religious reform movement that challenged the church. Henry saw them as a threat to stability. His solution? Burn them alive. Yes, really. His old friend John Oldcastle was among those executed. Medieval friendship goals, I'll burn you if you disagree with me. Henry returned to France in 1421 to secure his claim. But then, bam! Disease struck him down. He died suddenly in 1422. 2 months later, Charles VI of France also died. This left baby Henry VI, not even a year old, as supposed king of both England and France. Imagine a toddler ruling 2 kingdoms. Spoiler, it didn't go well. The English laid siege to Orleans in 1428, thinking they'd crush the French once and for all. But then, out of nowhere, a teenage peasant girl named Joan of Arc showed up, claiming visions from God. She rallied the French, lifted the siege, and led them to victory at the Battle of Patay, 1429. The Dauphin was crowned King Charles VII, thanks to Joan's inspiration. The English were furious. In 1430, Joan was captured by the Burgundians, handed over to the English, and put on trial for heresy. In 1431, she was burned at the stake. The French lost their heroine, but her legend was unstoppable. The English thought they still had Burgundy as their BFF. Wrong. In 1435, the Duke of Burgundy reconciled with Charles VII. England lost its most important ally. Suddenly, the French had momentum, and the English were left holding the bag. A truce was signed in 1444, but the English broke it in 1449, classic move. The French retaliated, retaking Normandy in 1450. Then came the Battle of Formigny, 1450, where the English were crushed. The last blow fell at the Battle of Castillon, 1453, where French gunpowder artillery obliterated the English army. And just like that, after 116 years, the English were left with only Calais and the Channel Islands. No treaty was signed, but everyone knew the war was over. England's dream of ruling France was dead. England developed a stronger national identity, centered on the English language. Bye-bye French as the ruling class tongue. France emerged victorious, proving resilience and unity. England began to see itself as an island nation, not a continental empire. And hilariously, France managed to go the entire war without naming a King Louis. Don't worry, they made up for it later. From Edward III's Tantrum to Joan of Arc's fiery fate, from treaties to betrayals, this was not just a war. It was a medieval epic of ambition, madness, plague, and arrows. England lost France, but gained an identity. France survived chaos, but emerged stronger. And the rest of us? We got one of the most dramatic sagas in history. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share. Every follow helps grow this channel. See you in the next one.